so much, Dwayne, and thank you everyone for coming. I know it's been a wild year, but we really appreciate y'all coming to this event, supporting Packrat. And so let's get into these questions. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, for, uh, so one of the things I really wanted to ask you, it might be like more of a personal question for me, but what do you think is the importance of building communities like houses for the LGBT community, especially for cutie pop?
I think it's super important. A lot of, at least in my experience, I'm also the older generation of gay. Hey, y'all. So, there has to be a space for happiness and freedom, right? And sometimes we don't always get that in our bio homes, at least through my friend's experience and mine. Like, sometimes we're out on the street, we're, living our best lives, trying our best to survive, and having another sense of family, especially that can identify with the things that you love to do and who you are as a person. My bio family was great, but honestly, they didn't understand what it meant to be gay, to be black and gay, because they're not gay. So being able to find, the creation of ballroom houses to me allow people to create that extra sense of family and acceptance where there wasn't any, right? They created a new space where we can really just be ourselves and find other people like us that can, I want to say, like, comfort us and that we can confide in and that understands our wants and needs as queer people, Um, yeah, I think it's honestly, I just think it's really important because to me, I think my life would have been a different path if I didn't find my family. So I'm very grateful to them for being able to understand me and all my queerness and all my weirdness, and to really just accept me on levels that my bio family could not. So I think that is a really important space. If you have houses near you or ballroom near you, I encourage you to go find your queer family.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we try to build a community as much as we can here at RCSGD, and we do have groups like Black Queer and La Familia that really build that for the little baby queers and cuties here on campus. And so I know you talked a little bit about house culture. So how did you join the House of Levan, and what is your favorite part about being in that house?
Hey, well, I joined my house only 3 years ago, actually. I was what's called a 007, which means kind of you don't have a house. You're just like a lone ranger in the game. I stayed by myself for a long time because I didn't know if I was ready to take on being in a house. I tell people when you do join a Vogue house, it comes with a lot of responsibility. So I just like the freedom of being able to go to balls whenever I felt like it. Say I can hang out with all the houses. You can still do that when you're in a house, but there's definitely a different vibe once you have a house name attached to your name. Um, but I joined them 3 years ago. I joined the House of Lavin because of the family, honestly. That was the one house that I went to, and they didn't matter what state or city I was in. It didn't matter if I was international. They were always there, like, "Hey, girl, do you need anything? Do you need a place to stay? Do you need some food? What's going on?" And they actually genuinely cared about who I was inside and outside the ballroom. It wasn't just about winning trophies or becoming the it girl in the ballroom scene. It was also like, who are you? How are you? And to me, that's the most important part is the family aspect for houses. Of course, when it comes to ballroom houses, there's a lot of things that come in. Of course, you want the namesake and having all the wins and the credibility, being the coolest house in town. But to me, it wasn't about that. There's tons of houses that are amazing. I think every house has, their diamonds. Every house has their rough portions, but to me, it was really the family that locked me in. My dad is, I don't know if y'all know him, Deshaun Wesley, aka Deshaun Marvin. He is like the icon of ballroom. um, and he was the one that actually asked me to come to the House of Lavin. I was like, no, I'm not ready. He was like, I want you to be my daughter. Can you please just come to the house? And I was like, okay. I was like, I can't deny the icon. You know what I'm saying? Who am I to deny an icon? So I was like, okay. So that's kind of how it came. I was just really traveling by myself for a long time and then hanging out with them. The more and more I hung with them, the more and more I connected. And that's all she wrote. She's been there ever since. And she don't plan on leaving.
And I really like how you talked about how they accepted you even if you weren't near them, because I think that's what a lot of people don't know about houses is that you can kind of be anywhere and still be a part of one. So how has being in the House of Levan like affected you and being a part of that culture?
Ooh, well, the ballroom culture honestly changed my life in a huge way. I was a very timid individual. I used to be so scared to dance in front of people. Like, mind you, I was a freestyle dancer, but when it came to like auditioning and like, getting myself out there, I didn't have that like, sense of confidence in self. And I tell you, the most scary thing you can do is to go to a ball and walk a ball. For real, it really, you have to build up the confidence. I tell people it's just like Paris is Burning. If you haven't seen it, it do take nerve because you have tons of people staring at you and they're just like, do something cool. They're very much staring at you like, do something amazing right now, and you're like, I don't know. But I think just being in the environment, one, friendships, I built so many friendships that I never expected to have in my life, and now they're like pretty much family to me. I tell people also confidence. Like ballroom built my confidence in a way that nothing else could, and I also added a sense of freedom to my life. I felt like I could be whoever I wanted to be at the ball. Especially if like the category was calling for like be a dragon, I could be like the prettiest, what I'm saying, the most out dragon I wanted to be. And I'm always like the glitter everywhere. So I think it's that sense of like no judgment, community, family, that really changes lives. I tell people, and like just to know that there's other people out like you that enjoy what you do and are welcoming. I think a lot of times in normal life, there's a lot of I want to say like queer pushback, like for people that aren't queers. They're like, what is it? I don't understand. And just having that safety of not having to explain yourself to someone or not having to, like break down who you are as a being and having to explain definitions of terminology, to be around people that just get it. I think that to me changed my life in a huge way. And as you can tell, it's addicting because I have not left. I've been involved since 2006 and it is 2020. So it's definitely a grand community.
So you talked about your history within ball culture. So what's your favorite ball category or like your best outfit? Like the one that's just like, oh, I remember that. I'm gonna take it to my grave. Like, yes.
Oh my gosh, I have two. My two favorite categories to walk are female figure performance and sex siren. The reason why I like to watch Sex Siren is kind of if you saw Legendary and you saw the body episode, Sex Siren is kind of like a side course to that. For a long time in my life, I wasn't, people didn't really consider me sexy. I was always like the nerd girl of the group where I was always like, the co-signer friend, they'd be like, hey, my friend likes your friend. I'm like, yeah, girl, okay. Like, and I was always like the mediator. So, but no one ever came after me. So I feel like that like sense of sexy that walking sex siren brings to you, that sense of self-love, self-confidence, and being able to accept my body for what it was. Um, and I think I walked sex siren in Philadelphia. It was Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The category called for all gold. And it was to promote safe sex in ball culture and queer culture. So you had to come with like a safe sex message. And I had like this huge like sign, this really huge sign. And I was like literally dressed up in gold with gold glitter all over my body. It was very funny to me, but it was definitely a memorable moment for me. And also female figure performance, because a lot of people expect me to walk women's performance because I am a cisgendered woman, but I feel like I'm challenged more when I walk against female figures because if you don't know ballroom, female figure performance comes with, you can have trans, you can have drags, you can have, non-binary, anyone that has feminine energy or identifies with the female gender can walk that category. So to me, I feel like it pushes my level of performance because I battle people like my house sister Michaela who can stunt and spin and backflip, you know what I'm saying? Versus just like I feel like a lot of times they baby women's performance the baby cisgender women because they kind of give us like a yay, we're glad you're here type of thing thing. But when you battle against the female figure performance category, it really challenges you and forces you to bring out all the stops and work harder in order to gain those titles. So it was Philadelphia again. I was in all pink that time. It called for all pink, and you had to wear like a pink jewel or something in your hair. And I wore like a pink crop top and like a little pink short and these pink heels. I couldn't afford pink heels because that was a time in my life where the struggle was real. So I literally took the cloth from like the headband that I was wearing and I hot glued it on my heels so that my heels could be pink too. And I just remember the entire crowd like went up for me that night and there was like snaps across the board. And I felt like that was like one of the most memorable moments of like my ballroom career because I went out there and I was having like the worst day of life. And then I got on the floor and it just changed my entire mood. So those were my two moments.
Okay, well, we love that creativity. Like, do what you have to do. It's probably still look really fierce.
Look, yeah.
So you kind of talked a little bit about being like a cisgender woman within ball culture. So how if being like, especially a Black woman, has that affected your experience at all? Have you noticed any differences between how you're perceived versus like men or even like other genders within ball culture?
Oh, yes. There's a huge divide when it comes to cisgender women in ballroom, mainly Black cisgender women in ballroom, because a lot of times our hair doesn't do, like, thankfully today, you know what I'm saying? But normally my hair doesn't give the shimmy shake like most girls' hair does, you know? And a lot of times in ball culture, they really get excited when you have hairography and little hair whips and spins, you know? And a lot of times when I have my little natural Afro puffs, my hair don't spin like that. so so I tell it forces me to really depend more on my Vogue versus like my tricks and stunts. I have to know how to Vogue. So I really had to force myself into learning my technique really harder. And I tell people there's a separation too of like they expect Black women to have rhythm. They expect Black women to be able to do. So they're not as wowed by Black women doing the same thing as someone of a different nationality, you know, saying from a different country, because they're like, oh, she should, if she's off beat, she should be on beat. Like, you know, it's like this high expectation that they already have for Black women. And that we have to be like, but girl, I work just as hard. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or like, girl, I know I did circles around her, but they'll be more excited the fact that she has that surprise element where they think that they can't and then they're able to, you know. So I feel like that's also a big issue. Also masculinity for females. I feel like a lot of times they don't let cisgender women explore their masculinity. So I used to actually walk all American runway instead of European. They thought I should walk European because I'm a cisgender woman, but I was like, no, I want to walk all American, which is pretty much men's runway. And there was a whole big debate about like, oh, are women allowed to walk that category? Do you think it's fair? And I'm like, how is that not fair when, you know what I'm saying? When you're allowed to do this, I think there's a double standard when it comes to queerness in the ballroom community. A lot of times men or people that identify with the male gender are allowed to explore their femininity to the full extent. You know what I'm saying? They can wear dresses and wigs and all this stuff, but at the minute the cisgender women decide to, you know, dabble in that area, they're like, no, you're supposed to be cute. You're supposed to be sassy. You know, there's this stigma of having to always be over a hyper femininity about women. So they expect you to always vogue in a heel and always, you know, wear like super, you know, beautiful outfit. I'm like, what if I wanted to come in a pant? Like, what if I wanted to come in a sweatpant and a sneaker and a Jordan? You know what I'm saying? How come I'm not received the same way as a girl that chooses to doll herself up and create this, you know, this imagery? So I definitely think there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to women's performance, when it comes to cisgender women as a whole, especially when it comes to Black women. I actually held a Black girl Vogue panel discussion a while back. I'll have another one soon because a lot of times, a lot of the Black women are still taking so long to become legendary and icons. So it's taking them longer to get their status versus international people. So that's been a big debate that's been happening now, is that how come the Black cisgender women are, you know, so low on the totem pole when it comes to giving them the accolades, you know, versus international and other girls of color or different nationalities in America. So I know that was a mouthful. It was a lot, but welcome to my life as a Black girl in ballroom.
Thank you so much for sharing your struggles and stories with with us. And I think it's really important to bring acknowledgement to it because, like, as a Black woman myself, there are a lot of struggles that I feel like aren't addressed just within being in the LGBT community as a whole. And so I really appreciate you bringing attention to that. And hopefully one day those won't be an issue anymore.
Okay.
Um, I guess hopefully.
Okay. I'm like, I'm open too, girl. I'm open too. No, it definitely has changed a lot though. The last thing I would say is like, there used to not even be a women's category in ballroom. So when I first started Vogue in 2006, there was only female figure or, femme queen, which is not a cisgender woman. There wasn't a category for us. But it really took, honestly, the international girls, like even though there was other women in America that were voguing, it took the international girls and a lot of other women to gain interest before they decided to let us have our own category. So that's also a big difference. How come everyone else got a category except for the cisgender women of ballroom? So just a little history.
And I think that's also really interesting when you think about how much of queer culture is borrowed from Black women and started with Black women to not have a place within, like, you help create the culture, but then you don't have a place in it. It's very interesting how that happened.
Okay.
So I would like to know, you were on Legendary. It was amazing. Joey had to turn me on to that show. Shout out to Joey, but it
Oh,
was so good. So what was it like having national exposure on Legendary? Like, and also, do you think it like helped or hurt ball culture?
Ooh, I feel like social media slash anything that has to do with taking things on a global scale has a blessing and a stressing, right? There's the part that is the good part where finally the scene is going from fully underground and just being known for Madonna being the creator, which she wasn't, of course, but it's finally going from underground and more people are being able to appreciate the style. More queers are being able to see the ballroom, the ballroom scene and just see the sense of community and gain inspiration and gain knowledge and learn about queer history, honestly. So I think that there's such a great moment where now so many more people are being able to be involved and exposed and see the joy and beauty in it. So I'm glad that it's being shared and people are able to experience that. But on the downside, it's also like the commercialization of it. Now a lot of people are kind of throwing out the history and being like culture vultures. They'll see like what's called a dip and they'll be like, oh, the shablam, oh, the death drop. And it's like, girl, if you would just go and do your history, you would know that that was never the name. So I think that there is a part of the glory of it that is being lost. And now people are also treating it as like performances, which was never a thing. Like ballroom was a place where you can just express yourself and let yourself be free. And now I feel like people are doing this thing where, especially since it's like social media, everyone's trying to get the clips. Everybody wants to go to a ball so that they can get a video so that they can post it and talk about how great they are and how fab they are and how they turned this crowd. When it was mainly just about being in the space and enjoying each other's energy and having a place where you're accepted when there was none. So I think that as there is the good to it. There is the bad, like the oversaturation now of like people that choose not to learn the history. Even like sometimes like now people are creating houses just because they watch like Paris is Burning and don't really know the full extent of what it feels like to run a house or take care of your children. They only see like the 5 seconds of like Paris is Burning or how do I look, saying 3 documentaries and they think they know everything about ballroom. And I'm like, ballroom is so much more than 3 documentaries. You got to remember, like, that's all they captured in those, what I'm saying? It's so much more than 3 documentaries. So I say the best way to do it is like, I just would love for everyone to do the history. I was like, even if now that it is being commercialized, don't just take the things that you see on Legendary. And I tell people, I love Legendary down, but Legendary also likes to show a lot of the sad parts of ballroom. Like they showed a lot of us like crying all the time and like all this negativity, but they didn't show all the times that we hugged each other backstage and supported the other houses backstage. They just was like, oh, this house is talking bad about that house. And this, what I'm saying? And I was like, there were so many times when we got off stage and we hugged each other like, yo, you slayed that. But they didn't show us saying that. So I tell people when it comes to commercialism, there also is like a teeter-totter between real and fake because it is a reality show at the end of the day. So blessings and the stressings. But I think Ballroom definitely gained a lot because it is the first time they were able to have like a competition show. Ballroom has never had a show on TV before, so it was history in the making, and I think that representation needed to be done. I'm glad that it was actually people from the ballroom scene that got to be on the show, because they could have casted anybody. They didn't have to cast actual ballroom people. I was glad that the people that casted the show actually went to the community, found people within the community, and brought them onto the show so that it could be as authentic as possible. I think they got a lot of things right, but hopefully in previous, the future seasons, they continue to grow it and make it better. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that insight. That's like not what the audience may see, especially if you're not within, if that's your first entrance into ball culture. But I think it's amazing that you were part of that history of it being the first show that focused on that. And, unfortunately, we do have to take it with a grain of salt. But thank you so much for helping bring that to a mainstream platform and showing the beauty and the power behind houses and ball culture. So I do know that we're running a little low on time. So one final question I would really love to ask you is, what advice do you have for young LGBT people, especially Black cuties?
I would say find the people you connect with, honestly. I think for me, being like when I was younger, I'm 32, guys. Okay, for all those who know, she's 32. Okay, yes, she's 32. But I came from a different era, right? A lot of people, thankfully, I have youthful skin. Thank my parents. Okay, but but literally, like there was so much. Like, you guys have it so good. You have it so good. Like, I remember not being able to just be gay in public in 2006, with the fear of getting shot or, mobs coming after you. I remember every gay club I went to getting shut down, or raided by police, and now you can just be, everyone's having coming out parties and waving rainbow flags and shit. Like, it's a different era of gay, and I'm excited of it, because to me that means that the universe is growing and people's minds are opening up, and it's becoming so much more power, within the community, and togetherness within the community. I would say, what else? Don't separate yourselves. I know that there's so many letters with the LGBTQA plus, right? But at the end of the day, we're all fighting for the same journey. And that's a lot of the things that I'm seeing now, is like, you see trans people pitted against bi people, and bi people saying that they have it harder than, than the gay people on this thing. And I'm like, no, we're all still on the same journey together. We're still all on the same journey together, and we should all be fighting with each other and for each other. It should be more about togetherness than separation. So I would encourage you to just like, be happy as the best you can. Find your queer tribe, find your queer friends. If you don't got one, DM me, okay? And just do your best to put yourself forward and try to make the community better for the next generation. Honestly, we want to get to the point where we don't have to have queer parades, because we're just regular now. Like, what I'm saying? Of course, we can still do it for like history, but I want to get to the point where we're not constantly fighting. But it has come a long way. So yes, y'all, we're making progress.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to see the voguing. I don't have the rhythm, so we're going to see how that works out. But thank you
Oh
so
no,
much for
everyone got
letting
it
me
in there.
interview.
Everyone has it in there,
We'll see this.
okay? Yes. I tell people, Vogue is not something you learn overnight, okay? I've been Vogue since 2006. Take everything that you learn with a grain of salt and don't expect to perfect it today. The goal is to have it so that you can practice it at home. Yeah. I like to say, I like to give you tools that you can take and that you can grow with at home. The more and more you practice, the more progression you get. It's not about being perfect, it's about progress. So.
Yep.